welcome to the Art of Being Human. We've come to about the end of the adult period in terms of my notes to you, but I want to make some comments about midlife that I think that I've observed over the years as an adult, as a person who's elderly now, and I think it may help you put some things in perspective in terms of the things that I've taught you. So let me begin on that, and then when we're finished with that, which is going to be this segment or the next segment, we'll go into the elderly period. So at any rate, here are my comments on midlife. Remember that all ages blend one into another. It's true that we can subdivide the ages of your life according to your age and according to what stage you're in, whether it's young adult, middle adult, late adult. We can do all of that, but actually all ages, even teenage into adulthood, kind of blends into each other. You know, I can ask the question, when are you elderly? Well, that depends upon who you are, because I think elderly period of time, it's different for different people. I ask the same question in terms of teenagers. When are you an adult? Well, it's different for different kids. It's not the same for everybody. Some people get a job right out of high school, they get married, they settle down, and they're an adult. Others go and keep on getting more and more education, and so their adulthood is sometimes basically postponed a little. So ages do blend into one another. Each age, and I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating, each age has its own set of problems that's typical for that age. As you develop from one stage to another stage, there will be certain problems that are typical of the age that you're in. How well you go through it depends upon your ability to resolve those issues and how you've resolved the issues in the stage before it. If you have resolved your issues from one stage to another stage to another stage, let's say from teenage to young adult and on down the line, then you may not have a very bad time when it comes to being adult. You may kind of sail through it and you're fine and you feel good. However, if you do not resolve the issues in each age period as it comes up, they pile up on one another, and by the time you get to the midlife, then you're reevaluating your life. You know, every so often in your life, your mind just turns into, what if I'd done something else? What if I'd met another person? What if I chose another career? And you tend to reevaluate your life, and that's natural. It can be very distressing, but it's very natural, and you do it every so often, especially in midlife when you've come to about the middle of your natural life and you're thinking, have I done what I wanted to do? Have I met my personal goals? What do I want to do now? Is it the same or is it different? And some people make midlife career changes. All of this is natural. But it's a lot easier to go through if you have resolved the issues that come in any particular stage. So depending upon how you've solved or grown through things, midlife can be easy or it can be difficult. It's going to have some challenges because you are reevaluating your life. Now add to the natural progression of your life, you have other things that you're dealing with in adulthood. You have, for example, maybe you may be saddled with chronic health problems such as diabetes or Parkinson's or myasthenia gravis or any number of them. We've gone through them before. You may have a learning disability, you may be dyslexic, you may have autism, you may have mental difficulties, depression, you may have drug use, you may have other chronic problems that you're dealing with, or family issues that you're dealing with, or a divorce that you're dealing with. So you have a lot of things piled up on you as you go through life, but this is life. Everybody has those things. And then on top of that, when you get to midlife, you've got some changes in your hormonal nature. For women, it's much more pronounced than men. For women, the hormones drop. The estrogen or the progesterone particularly drop, and they can drop rather rapidly, and then you get all kinds of menopause symptoms, and we've gone over those. Men also go through kind of a male menopause. They lose their hormones too, but they do it in such a gradual rate that their body usually has the time to adjust to it, and they don't usually have the severe symptoms that some women have. However, some women go through it easily, some men have it difficult. So, you can't make one rule for every sex, because it can be different. It's an individual thing. So life is not for sissies. It can be hard. But here are the things I want you to remember as you go through your life, and this would be true for men or for women in any stage of life. You can have joy in your life by doing the things that you like, by having the career that you want, by being successful, but of course you have to stop and ask, what is success? It's different for different people. My idea of success may not be the same as your idea of success, but if you have a good life, if you have a satisfying career, if you have faith to rely on, and that's critically important because you can get through anything practically if you have enough faith to help bolster you and enough people who share a faith with you that they can help you through it, you'd be surprised what the human being can actually go through. And if you have good friends, now don't ignore your friends. I was a college professor, and I put a lot of time and work in my classes. I had a lot of people who wanted to be in my classes, and they would bang on my door, can you take one more, can you take one more? And I took as many as I could squeeze in because they needed to have a class. There were other people who taught what I taught, but they wanted to be in my class because I did different things with them, and I had different experiments that I devised, and they really learned quite a bit. Also, I had relationships with them so that if anyone was hungry and they couldn't afford lunch, I would take them home for lunch. I would bring in food for them if they needed it. So I had a really good relationship with the students. So at any rate, it was interesting. But as I was working on my classes, as I said, I put hours into it. I suddenly realized, what about my friends? Was I ignoring my friends? And I happened to think it was kind of like a moment of insight for me. When I get to be 80s and 90s, now remember, I was thinking of this as a 30-year-old because I was a college professor in my 30s and 40s. But as I was thinking about it, I was saying, when I get too old to teach, and here I am 80 and I'm not too old to teach, but at some point, you get too old to do things, then who's going to give you comfort and who's going to give you joy? It's going to be the people that you deal with. It's going to be your family, it's going to be your friends, but they may not be there if you ignore them. And then if you're sitting in your old age in your rocking chair, I haven't done it yet, but if you're sitting in your old age in your rocking chair, then what's going to comfort you? The prize that you won, the party that they gave you because you won a certain award, the awards that you won, that's going to be of little comfort. That's over and done with, and it was good when it happened, and you're glad that it happened, but that's not going to sustain you in terms of friendships and having relationships when you get older. Because your needs as you get older are the same as when you're younger. You need to have personal relationships. You need to know people and do things with people. You need to feel important. You need to feel like you're accepted in a group. That's always with us. That doesn't change according to age. But if you spend all your time on your career development, and that's the most important thing to you, you may achieve all your career goals, but at the end of the day, when you're not doing it anymore, there's no comfort there. There's no relationships there, and you're left alone just thinking about what you accomplished when you were younger. What comfort is that? Well, it's not. I don't know why I started thinking of this when I was working as a professor, but I did. And of course, I wasn't one to ignore my friends anyway. I always had good friends. But I paid more attention to them, and I paid more attention to my family, because here I was in the South teaching, and they were in the North wondering where their aunt was, wondering where their cousin was. And I was just off doing my thing. So don't ignore your friends, don't ignore your family, have all the good relationships that you can, and then when you stop being able to do your profession, and I don't know when that is, because I'm still doing mine, but at the time when you stop, because either you want to, you feel you've done enough, you don't want to do it anymore, or if your health changes and you can't do it anymore, It's going to be important for you to have those friends to rely on and those family members that you can contact and have social relationships. That will meet your need for feeling important and feeling accepted and feeling good. Getting an award in the past is not going to do it, but your relationships will do it. So I just want you to keep this in mind. You could also have joy in your life through being creative and realizing that things happen for a reason. And sometimes as life changes, you're facing a new reality. Supposing you're going along and you're fine, and then suddenly you discover that you have Parkinson's disease. Well, your new reality is that you can't do what you used to do as the disease is progressing. This changes your reality. Things that happen to you can change your reality. Or maybe there's a new baby in the family, or maybe there's been a divorce, or maybe one of your relatives has gone to prison. It can be anything that can change your reality, and you have to face life with new, fresh eyes. So keep that in mind. Life will never be the same always. There's always going to be some kind of ebb and flow. Something's always going to happen. Now, you also can have joy by willing to adapt where necessary and also being willing to forgive where necessary. If people have hurt you along the way, well, that's typical. We rub up against each other, and some of us do get hurt. I think everybody gets hurt at some point, but you have to be forgiving. If you are not forgiving, then your resentment and your wish for revenge just eats at you and can destroy you. If you can forgive, you can let it go. It doesn't mean you have to be friends with the person who hurt you. It doesn't mean that you have to be buddy-buddy with them or even have anything to do with them. They may have moved on. They may not even be around anymore. But if you mentally let that go and forgive them, then you can progress in your own life, and you're not going to have to worry about how this person is acting or how you can get back at somebody. Life is not about revenge. Life is about going forward. And if it's a new reality for you, then that's what it is. That statement, "it is what it is," is actually true sometimes. You also have to be willing to work for what your goals are. You need to set goals. Now, these goals don't have to be like anybody else's goals. You don't have to have a new car because somebody else has it. You don't have to be successful in the sense that somebody else is successful. We are not created to be somebody else. We are created to be us. So what's good for you may not be good for somebody else, but it doesn't matter. We're all individuals. You can't expect everybody to go through their phases of life in the same way that you do because it's such an individual thing. Children go through phases in their lives, but they do it a little differently because they're different individuals, and you don't expect that one child is going to be like another child, even in the same family. So adults aren't the same either. But you need to work for what you want. You need to appreciate what you have, because compared to the rest of the world, you're probably a lot better off. Now, maybe not, because I don't know who's watching this and I don't know your personal situations, but if you stop to think of it, you may be a lot better off than other people are. Life happens, but you can define your goals and you can define your values, and what you have to do is to seek out your goals, work diligently for them, and live out your values. Don't ever deny what your values are. Hold strict to your values and reach your goals, which should be kind of in line with what your values are. Your goals should not be opposite of what your values are. The two have to be in sync somehow, and if you work toward your goals and live out your values, I think you'll be a happy person. Remember, when you achieve your goals as a young person, you probably will reevaluate your goals periodically as you go along, and that's a perfectly natural process. The mind does it. You just turn to what your life is. Well, how can I make a change? Do I want to make a change? Am I happy the way I am? And if I am, I don't have to change anything. But if I'm not happy, then maybe I have to think in terms of a new career or a new goal or something to strive for that's different. And that will keep you young. Your goals may need to change as your circumstances change, either to illness, chronic illness, or whatever else is happening in your family. I know that as I used to watch a weather station, and there was a new weatherman on, And he was doing well, and he loved it. He loved the show. You would recognize it if I told you what it was, but I'm not going to, just for the sake of their privacy. And something happened in his family, and he had to leave the job that he loved. He loved being a weatherman. It was a national syndicated show. Tons of people watched it every morning. And he had to leave because of some family situation. And I know he was bitterly disappointed in that, because he loved what he was doing. And I thought to myself, isn't there some way that people could step in so he could keep doing the things that he needed to do, that he wanted to do? But he felt he had to leave, and he left. And I know he was disappointed, but you see, what you have to do when disappointments come, you have to realize that things happen for a reason. You may not know the reason at first, but as you adapt to it and you have a new reality and you work with it, at some point you'll be able to look back at it and say, oh yeah, now I understand why. I know it's happened to me as an elderly person a number of times. Why didn't I go to Ohio State to get my PhD, which I was offered to do? The grant didn't come through, so I couldn't go, but there was a purpose in it. And I can understand as I look back what that purpose was. But you do go through disappointments, and your realities do change as you're getting older. You live your life, and you do the best you can, and you hold tight to your values, and you never compromise your beliefs. You can be a joyous person. Even if something is going against you, you can still have joy in your life. And remember, joy is different than happiness. Happiness is a giddy thing that happens every so often, and we can be happy, but joy is more basic. It's more like a trait, and it's more lasting. So how do you define success? Well, it's not the same for everyone. What's successful for me is not necessarily successful to you. So you have to answer the question, have you satisfied your goal, and does that make you successful? And what would you like to do if time and money and obligations were no obstacle, and you didn't really care about any of those things, it wasn't important, then what would you like to do? What in your heart would you like to do? Where would you like to go? What would you like to be? Where would you like to be living? What would you like to be doing? Is it any substantial difference in what you're doing already? Maybe not. Then you've been quite successful. If it is, then you have to make a decision. Do I go forward and go ahead trying to reach the goals I didn't reach, or do I become satisfied with what I have now? That's an individual thing that only you can figure out for yourself, but it is an issue that does come up in midlife, because in midlife, the primary characteristic of midlife, as I see it, is a reevaluation of your life as your body is changing. You see, your body is changing, your body is slowing down, the bones are getting more sore, you may have a chronic illness you didn't have before, your eyesight isn't as good, you're not as limber as you used to be, and what are you thinking? Well, this job, can I still do it? Do I want to do it? Do I want to make a change? And so you get the new reality kind of sets in, and you have to decide what you want to do. So at any rate, it depends upon what you decide for yourself. There is a statement, you can bloom where you're planted, and you really can bloom where you're planted. Other people can be role models for you. And we have role models. There are people that we like, some that we know and some that we don't know, except by reputation, or we see them on TV or whatever. They can be role models for us, but you never can be that person. You need to be the best person that you can be for yourself, but you can't be so much like another person that's a role model that you practically become them. You were not created to become somebody else. You were created to be the best you that you can be. And so don't try, if you have a role model, that's fine. You can adapt to that. You can learn from that role model, who may not even know you, or they may know you, whichever, it doesn't really matter. But you can't become them. You can use them as an example of what your life can be like, but you can't become them. You have to be the best you that you can be. You can learn learn a lot from other people. You need to respect the individuality of all people, even if they disagree with you. I have friends of many different religious persuasions and many different ways of living, and I like them and they like me, and we do fine. You don't have to believe the way that they do. You don't have to agree with everything that they say or everything that they do. You can still be friends, and that adds to the richness of life, to know as many people as you can, to learn as much about people as you can, and to respect them for who they are. And likewise, they need to respect you. Don't allow anyone to bully you. If you're not being respected and you're being kind of verbally assaulted, then drop them as friends. They're not friends. You can have good friends of many different persuasions and do very fine. So you need to remember that. Everybody is a valuable person. You are a valuable person. Nobody owns you. No one can force you to do something unless you let them force you. So you see, no one owns you. But in likewise, you don't own anybody else either. You are not owned by anybody, and you do not own anybody. Even your own children aren't owned. I've thought a lot of times that children are for rent, but not for owning. Now, that doesn't mean you stop being a parent. You're always going to be a parent. You're always going to want to give them advice. You're always going to have an open relationship with them, but they get to be adults, and then you have to let them go and let them make their own mistakes and let them make their own decisions and follow that through. You love them, you guide them, you teach them, and then when the time is right, you have to let them go and let them lead their own lives without losing touch with them. And they oftentimes will come back and they want your advice, and that's fine, but you don't own them. You need to remember that. You never stop being a parent, and you'll be hopefully close to them emotionally, but you won't ever be a parent. So I think we've come close to what I wanted to say about adulthood. There's lots and lots of things that go on in adulthood. By the time you're a teenager, you've thought about what you want as a career. Then you've hopefully achieved that career or changed it according to what you want. And then you start your adulthood and things get going and you pay attention to your career, and then you become an adult, and all these various things happen that I've mentioned that we've gone into, and then you find that the years go by faster than you ever dreamed that they would. But remember, you're the same person when you get toward the elderly age period. You're the same person as you were before, because there's no separate personality of old age. So I'll be going into that next time, so I'm going to close it here, and hopefully this will help you as you sort things out in your life, and I will start the elderly period next time. Please join me then.